So I want you to imagine that you're standing in front of this this massive half-finished bridge.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. And it's an absolute marvel of modern engineering. I mean, it's designed to connect two thriving cities that desperately need to trade with one another.
Sounds like a pretty vital piece of infrastructure.
Exactly. The blueprints are flawless. The steel and concrete are stacked up. They're paid for and ready to go.
Mm.
But there's a glaring problem.
Which is?
The construction workers keep burning their own scaffolding down.
Wow. Okay, why would they do that?
Well, half the workforce is wearing blue hard hats, and the other half is wearing green hard hats. And someone like a foreman or a politician with a megaphone convinced them that the color of the hat dictates who ultimately owns the bridge.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Right. So instead of pouring concrete, they just fight. They sabotage each other's equipment, and the bridge just sits there, rusting and unfinished, while the people on both sides of the river remain economically stranded.
That is a really powerful analogy, and it perfectly sets up the document we're doing a deep dive into today, which is a text titled Episode 9, Unity Beyond Religion.
Yeah, it's a fascinating read.
It really is. What makes it so compelling is how it takes incredibly sensitive touch points, like deeply held religious doctrines and raw political trauma, and tries to reverse engineer them through exactly that kind of structural lens you just described.
Right. But before we get too deep into the weeds, we should probably set some ground rules for today's discussion.
Absolutely. Because this source deals with such sensitive topics, I want to be explicitly clear to you, the listener, right up front. We are not here to endorse any specific political viewpoints or validate the author's theology.
Yeah, we're keeping this strictly impartial.
Exactly. Our mission today is just to impartially report on and analyze the framework the author presents, because their breakdown of how societies intentionally fracture themselves, much like those workers burning their own scaffolding, is just a fascinating way to understand modern conflict.
And, you know, those mechanics of societal division apply to you, the listener, regardless of your background, whether you sit in a pew, kneel on a prayer mat, or consider yourself entirely secular.
Right, because the gravitational pull of in-group and out-group dynamics, it dictates the culture of the community you live in. It's the hidden tension in your workplace.
It even shapes the legislative priorities of the nation you navigate every single day.
Exactly. The author is essentially taking a universal human vulnerability and observing it through this high-stakes lens of religious division in developing nations, particularly across the African continent.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when we look at history, religion is usually cast in one of two extreme roles. Okay?
Yeah.
It's either the ultimate protagonist, you know, the source of our moral compass and charity, or it's the ultimate antagonist, the root cause of all these devastating wars.
Right, the classic binary.
But this source frames it totally differently. It frames religion primarily as a tool that gets hijacked. So how exactly is this tool being wielded against ordinary people?
Well, to understand the weaponization, the text forces us to look at the tangible costs of this division. We aren't just talking about, abstract theological disagreements here.
Or hurt feelings.
Exactly. We are talking about a literal economic and societal tax. The text highlights this really tragic irony. While these populations, Christians, Muslims, traditionalists, are engaged in bitter sectarian standoffs, they are simultaneously suffering from the exact same systemic poverty.
Wow. So sectarianism is basically operating as a massive tax on a developing nation's GDP.
Precisely. The author points out that instead of pooling resources to build, say, one state-of-the-art hospital for a city, divided communities might demand two mediocre, underfunded clinics.
Just so they don't have to share a waiting room with the other.
Exactly. And the poverty itself doesn't discriminate based on theology. The text notes that a mother cries the exact same tears over a hungry child, whether she identifies as Christian or Muslim.
Right. A lack of clean water or paved roads. It punishes everyone equally.
Yeah. And this is where the author introduces a critical sociological argument, this continuous state of division. It is not some divine mandate.
It's manufactured.
Yes. It's a calculated strategy. Political and community leaders actively exploit these fault lines to maintain control and avoid accountability.
Because if you can keep a population locked in a perpetual state of anxiety over religious differences, they're distracted.
Highly distracted. They are so busy guarding those metaphorical blue and green hard hats that they never stop to ask the leaders why the bridge hasn't been built or where the infrastructure budget actually went.
Which introduces perhaps the most unexpected layer of this entire document. The author brings hard neurology into this deeply spiritual discussion.
Yeah, this part is fascinating.
The text points out that this kind of fear and identity manipulation literally shuts down rational thinking. It makes entire populations biologically easier to control. It's essentially like someone hacking the human brain's operating system.
That's a great way to put it, because when powerful leaders inject fear, it overrides our logical software. The neurology backing that up is profound.
Break that down for us a bit.
Sure. So when a leader invokes a threat to your core identity, warning that another group is coming to destroy your faith or your way of life, that message bypasses the analytical parts of the brain entirely.
So it goes straight to the primal hardware.
Exactly, straight to the amygdala, our threat detection center.
Right.
And when the amygdala fires, it floods the body with stress hormones and actively suppresses the prefrontal cortex.
And the prefrontal cortex is the part responsible for, logic and nuance.
Logic, reason, nuance, long-term planning. You
Yeah.
literally lose access to the cognitive tools required to build a bridge or a nation. You're reduced to pure reactive survival mode.
Okay, but I have to push back on the author's premise slightly.
Go for it.
It's one thing for a text to point out that we're being biologically hacked by opportunistic leaders, but isn't it easier said than done to just turn off that fear? Especially when it's so deeply tied to someone's core identity and their view of eternity.
Oh, absolutely. The text doesn't suggest that a population can simply logic their way out of an amygdala hijack through sheer willpower. You can't.
The biological response is just too strong.
Right, it's too deeply ingrained. Instead, what's fascinating here is that the author argues we have to design social and physical structures that prevent that threat response from firing in the first place.
So you have to bypass the neurological alarm system.
Yes. And the author argues that the blueprints for those bypass structures are actually hidden in plain sight right inside the very religious texts that are being used to divide people.
Okay, so if the biological hack relies on making us view the other as a threat, the document suggests we consult the original operating manuals.
The foundational traditions, yes, to see how they were actually intended to function.
And what do they say?
Well, the author conducts a comparative analysis across traditions, showing that the foundational mandate is structural unity, not tribal isolation. They give 3 specific examples.
Right. The first one is a direct quote from Jesus, who prays, quote, that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you.
Which is a mandate for profound integration, not just polite coexistence, but an inseparable unity.
Exactly. And then the source moves to the Quran.
Yeah, referencing verse 3.1/3, it says, "Hold firmly to the rope of Allah, all of you together, and do not be divided."
I really love the physics of that metaphor.
It's brilliant, isn't it? A rope requires tension. If a group is holding a heavy rope to pull a load, and one faction decides to let go just because they don't like who is standing next to them,
The entire collective loses its grip.
exactly, the structure fails. It's a very physical representation of mutual dependence.
And then the third example grounds all this ancient global theology in local ancestral knowledge. The text highlights a traditional African proverb, sticks in a bundle are unbreakable.
Right. Again, structural mechanics. A single stick snaps easily. But bound together, they distribute the force.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. By aligning ancient scriptures with localized African proverbs, the author is basically redefining what true faith actually is in the modern era.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, yeah, absolutely. Historically, faith is often measured by strict doctrinal purity, right? Who performs the rituals correctly?
But this document flips that entirely. It asserts that true faith wasn't meant for endless debates over doctrine.
The author posits that the truest expression of faith is joining hands to actively fight corruption. It's the collaborative, on-the-ground construction of schools, hospitals, and industries.
So shifting faith from a private belief system to a
Yeah.
measurable civic utility.
Exactly. Which naturally leads us to the most pragmatic section of the document. If the mandate is unity, what does that actually look like on a Tuesday afternoon?
Right. How do you operationalize this?
The source outlines 5 practical pathways, and these aren't just feel-good platitudes. They operate almost like cognitive behavioral therapy at a societal level.
To counteract that amygdala hijack we talked about.
Precisely. Step 1 is see the human before the label. You have to intentionally train yourself to recognize a neighbor's inherent dignity before your brain stands for their religious tag.
Forcing the brain to identify similarity before it locks onto a threat. But again, you can't just wish that into existence.
No, which is why step 2 demands physical action. collaborate on common goals. Churches, mosques, and traditional councils need to actively partner on universal needs.
Like clean water, basic education, healthcare.
Yeah. Because, like we said earlier, a pothole doesn't care about your theology.
Yeah.
When a multi-faith coalition has to dig a well together, they have to plan, share tools, maintain the infrastructure.
And all those micro-interactions slowly rewrite the brain's threat algorithms.
Exactly. Replacing suspicion with mutual reliance, which makes step 3 much easier. Reject manipulation.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Step 3 is really about asking one crucial question whenever you hear divisive rhetoric. Who actually benefits from this division?
And the text notes, it is almost exclusively the powerful who benefit, never the working class.
It's kind of like watching a grand magic trick, but finally deciding to look behind the curtain to see who's pulling the strings.
Or, to use a biological analogy, think of sectarian leaders like an autoimmune virus. They intentionally trigger the community's defensive immune response, but misdirect it so the community attacks its own healthy tissue.
Wow, breaking down its own strength while the virus thrives in the chaos. So rejecting manipulation means recognizing the virus.
Yes. And to inoculate the community, step 4 is celebrate diversity. Actively attend each other's weddings, festivals, milestones.
Because familiarity fades fear. When you break bread with someone, they cease to be a nameless other.
Which culminates in step 5, teach the next generation. Raising children to value a good heart and integrity over whatever religious badge someone happens to wear.
Now, this raises an important question about what unity actually means. Because some people hear unite and think it means total uniformity, watering down your beliefs and pretending we all agree.
The source is very careful to prevent that interpretation. Unity isn't pretending everyone believes the same thing. There are fundamental, irreconcilable differences in theology.
Right.
Unity is the active, difficult choice to love and work together despite those fundamental differences. You don't need theological consensus on the afterlife to agree that the local school roof needs fixing today.
It's operational unity for human flourishing. And the author actually zooms out to show what this looks like on a macro level.
Yeah, they paint a massive vision for the future.
Imagine a Nigeria where Christians and Muslims unite entirely against corruption, or a Ghana where traditional leaders, pastors, and imams collaboratively build tech schools.
A South Africa where communities stop burning with division and rise with innovation. The ultimate conclusion is stark. The real enemies aren't in churches or mosques.
They're corruption, greed, poverty, and injustice. A divided Africa will remain poor regardless of how many prayers are said.
But a united Africa will rise.
Exactly. So what small step can you take toward unity this week? Can you greet a neighbor of another faith or reject divisive language from a leader?
Those everyday choices matter, and I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder that pushes beyond the source. Earlier, we talked about how fear literally rewires the brain to cause division.
The biological hack.
Right. So if our brains are biologically hardwired to react to fear and identity threats, is it possible for us to consciously design our communities to trigger that exact same biological loyalty, but toward our shared humanity instead of our specific labels?
Oh, wow.
What would a neuroscience of unity actually look like in your own neighborhood?
That is definitely something to think about. Stop arguing over the color of the hard hats, put out the fires, and start building the bridge. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.